Welcome into another edition of Sports Junkies. I'm Sparky Fifer from AM 1250, 105.7 FM The Fan, co-host of the Wendy's Big Show weekday afternoons from 2 until 6. In Milwaukee, he, of course, Gery Woelfel, columnist here at the Racine Journal-Times. Time to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, whose struggles continue playing defense and defending the three. This has been going on the whole season. They've had a handful of games where they've defended the three kind of okay, but really it's becoming their Achilles heel right now.
We said this last season.
Yep.
We said it all this season, and all of a sudden Jason Kidd comes back and said, we got to defend the three much better. Hello? We've seen this for a year and a half. This isn't anything new.
But see, this is the thing, and I said this before. Kidd's out with his hip replacement surgery or whatever, right?
Right.
This gives Jason a chance to look from the outside in. So now instead of being in and coaching the game from the inside, it's kind of like a coach that goes up into the announcer booth who's out of coaching for a year. And
I understand.
I get a whole different perspective. Now Kid goes from the outside in, now gets to watch it on TV, whatever, and look at it a different way than being involved. Because when you're involved and you're attached to something, it's a little bit different. It's like me on. It's like, look, it's
I'm
like
not
me.
buying that at all.
I don't have to, but it's like me being on the radio. It's like, oh, what do you think of the show? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm in it. So
I agree with that part.
I can't tell you what you hear. I can just tell you what it feels like on the inside. When you get to go out and now you play the show for me and I listen to it, it's a totally different perspective.
I understand where you're coming from. All Jason Kidd had to do is pick up a game sheet, stat sheet after every game and look at the three-point shots. Consistently, the Bucks were getting killed in the three-point line.
Right, but Gary, this is my point. And I brought this up. I do Sparky's Bucks weekly, and it changes week to week on day and time. Next week it's on Wednesday night. But this last week was on Monday, and we had John Hammond on taking questions for a half hour. Mm-hmm. And I brought it up to John about the defense. I go, John, I said, maybe it's just me. I said, but when I watch our defense play, it looks like when we're playing it right, we're running around with our hair on fire. And John started laughing about that. But I go, but it's true. It looks like we exert more energy trying to play our scheme than other defenses do playing their scheme. And if one guy misses, the whole defense is screwed in their rotations. And he said, no, I don't know if I agree with that. Okay, fine. So then I have Greg Monroe on after the last Bucks win. I ask him the same thing. And he says, no, I don't think we exert any more energy than anybody else does on defense. But see, again, now that's
totally disagree with you.
So you agree with me?
Absolutely. It's not even close. Let me tell you.
Now, again, I'm not playing it. I'm just watching it.
Yeah, if you watch the big men in particular, they do not sit around the basket. They'll go out on the perimeter and trap guys.
Right.
Most teams don't send their big man out and expose them like that. I talked to Greg Popovich about this earlier in the season, and the question I posed to him was, is there a team in the NBA that doubles as much as the Bucks? And he started laughing. And he goes, no, but I could name a couple college coach or teams that do,
Right.
And that's a fact. Everybody knows it. Carmelo Anthony told me, he goes, do you think Jason Kidd's going to let me go 1-on-1 against his team? No. They trap. And the problem is, and we brought this up in post-game shows before, if you play good teams, smart teams, that move the ball crisply, that have good perimeter shooters, they'll kill this off defense.
But this is the reason why I think they play it. And I don't know, but my personal opinion is they don't have enough good individual defenders that if they played man-on-man, they know Jabari would get smoked. They know Monroe may have problems. They know certain guys are going to struggle, right? Mm-hmm. So to make up for that, let's use our length, double, get deflections, get tips, get out on a fast break. I think that's the basis of why they play the defense they do.
No, the premise of their defense is to take the ball out of the opposition's best scorer or scorers.
Sure.
Okay? If Carmelo Anthony comes into town, you're going to see nonstop doubles on him. If Paul George comes into town, nonstop. Because they want to take their chances on the other guys trying to beat them.
Who are all having nights against the Bucks.
Yeah, and so, in theory it sounds good, but in the NBA you have so many good players, and especially today where you have good perimeter shooters. I don't know. I'm not a big fan.
No, me personally, and I said it before, look, if you can't figure out the scheme, if the players are just struggling for everybody being on the same page to work, I'm sure it works if everybody's playing all out on every possession.
Exactly.
And nobody misses assignments. I'm sure it works like a machine, right? I'm not saying the scheme doesn't work. Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is it doesn't work for this group right now. So why not just go to something easy and basic and play that where everybody knows where they have to be, they're not going to be dead tired, and let them just play that and see what happens. You can't be any worse.
Well, I mean, the Bucks are smart enough to realize when they comprise this team that Jabari's not going to be a great one-on-one defender.
Right.
Monroe's not going to be a good one. Giannis is hit and miss. You don't know which one is. Middleton's been a big disappointment to me on the defensive end. Michael Carter-Williams, when he wants to play, is as good as anybody.
Yes.
But when he doesn't want to play, just another guy.
Right.
So they knew this in constructing their lineup, that they're going to have defensive problems, you know. I mean, it's not mere coincidence that when Henson comes in, their interior defense gets better,
right.
you know. But the point is, Monroe offers you so much more from an all-around perspective.
You've got to keep him.
You got to keep him. I mean, the other day, Steve, I looked at, you know how many double-doubles he has this year?
16? 17. 20. Oh, how many?
24. Okay?
Right.
That ranks, if I'm not mistaken, 4th or 5th in the league, okay? Everyone in the top 10 is probably going to be in the All-Star game.
But
Monroe.
Right.
I think Monroe's an all-star. I think he's been
did
consistently.
you hear what DeMarcus Cousins said?
Oh, yeah, I did hear that.
Of all the people he could have said, DeMarcus Cousins in his quote says, we should get rid of fan voting, blah, 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 blah. He said, all those guys over on the Milwaukee Bucks and on our team that should be on that NBA All-Star team aren't going to be there. Of all the teams in the NBA he picks out,
yeah.
Cousins points to the Bucks and goes, look, they got All-Stars. They're not going to get any in. We have All-Stars, and the same thing's going to happen.
And that's been traditionally the case. I
Sure.
mean, you know, if you don't have a winning record or you're not in a playoff picture, the odds are you're not going to get it an All-Star, which is a bunch of crap. I mean, you could be LeBron James and be surrounded by 5 bad players, 4 bad players, whatever.
And you're going to win.
And you know, it's not fair. I think if a player is good, he deserves to be in the All-Star game, regardless of what his team's doing.
So this Bucks roster, we're about a month out now from the NBA trade deadline. Does Trader John get active again?
I don't think it's Trader John. I think it's Trader Jason. Kid is running the show. I think that's abundantly clear to anybody that follows the NBA or the Bucks really closely. John Hammond right now, what's the proper term? Supplies information for Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd is making the final decisions.
And then he pulls the strings.
And Jason Kidd, I think, is the impatient type. So do I think they're going to make a trade? Yes, I do. Because he's impatient. I can't. There's no reason they should be, 2027 at this point? None. Zero. And I think he realizes that.
How about
you look like you're baffled or
well, I just don't understand.
Perplexed,
because
you know?
if that's the case, then, dude, why did you take this job? I mean, why are you here? I mean, seriously, why did Jason Kidd come here to coach if he didn't understand what the long-term plan was? You've got a nucleus now to build with for the next 3 years. George Karl said it, by God, when they were in town taking on Sacramento. George Karl said, look, I failed as a head coach when I was here. But
No. You're talking about Scott Skiles.
Or Scott Skiles, right, not George Karl.
Yeah.
Scott Skiles said when he was here for Orlando, he said, look, probably I would look at it as a failure as a coach. But the one thing I realize now in the NBA is you have to have a couple of All-Stars, and then you have to have a nucleus that stays around those All-Stars for a while. And I said, amen. That's what the Bucks are trying to do right now. You go do something stupid at the deadline because you're worried about your win-loss record and your career win-loss record. Get out of here. Just leave.
Yeah,
I don't want you.
I saw the quote by Skiles, too, and I was a little surprised because Scott Skiles has been around the NBA for a long time. He knows you need 3 really good players. That's no secret. I mean, when Ernie Grunfeld was the general manager of the Bucks, he went out and he knew they had to have 3 primetime players,
And got Cassell.
And you just can't go with 2. 2's not going to get it done, unless you got LeBron, of course.
Right.
But an exception to every rule. But, I mean, that's widely known. You got to have superstars to go.
Well, I agree with you. But the other part of that was also keeping the nucleus around those couple of All-Stars that you have.
Yeah.
And I brought it up to Hammond. I said, John, look, some guy asked him about making a trade or whatever. And I said, John, the one thing that you talk about, which he brought up, was keeping the nucleus together going forward. And that's something that they want to do, okay? And I said, good. Because for the last 10 years or so, I said, we've flipped over half the roster every season, depending on what that coach wanted for the next season.
And
that's what happens.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
cannot win consistently if you continue to flip that roster.
Well, I mean, Ersan Ilyasova told me on several occasions that irritated him to no end.
Yes.
That they would flip the roster over.
Yep.
He said everybody in that organization, the front office he was referring to, always thought in terms of assets. So if we want to trade these guys, we have, quote, assets. And nobody was concerned about putting chemistry and having a cohesive unit, you know? And it's so true. These guys get wrapped up strictly on talent, and that's, obviously a mistake.
He's Gery Woelfel of the Racine Journal-Times. I'm Steve Sparky from AM 1250, 105.7 FM The Fan. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Sports Junkies here.
You're relatively mild today.
Kind of. At RacineSportsZone.com.